Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another episode of First Impressions, the video series where I discuss films, either ones I've been meaning to watch for a while or ones that are still going through their theatrical run. Today is one of the former, and it's one that I've known about for a while, just haven't gone around to watching it because till recently I had no interest, and that was until one of my critic friends saw it and was talking about it. So I decided to do some research on it over the course of a couple days, and I found out it was on Netflix. I'm like, might as well give it a watch. And one of the things I found about it that was a little surprising was that it's directed by Werner Herzog, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Of course, known more famously for Aguirre, the Wrath of God, if I'm pronouncing that first word correctly in that title, the remake of Nosferatu, and of course other documentaries such as Into the Abyss. Now, since I've seen one of his documentaries, and I can honestly say I like his documentary style, that he covers the territory without being overly judgmental. He'll give his opinion on it, but he doesn't come across as like beating you over the head with it, like other documentary makers. Michael Moore. Now, when I found that, I'm like, he made it. That should be interesting. And of course, I watched it and just finished watching about half hour ago. Showered and let my thoughts stew because with the research I've been doing into the story behind this documentary, it's been a couple days of looking stuff up. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, and I'll do so in good course. Now, the overall structure of the documentary is that it tells the tale of bear enthusiast Timothy Treadwell, who chronicled bears in the Katmai National Park in Alaska for 13 summers. And the last summer he went, which was the summer of '03, he stayed a little bit too long, and he ended up being mauled, killed, and eaten by an adult grizzly bear. The bear turned out to be a 28-year-old bear that he had had some minor encounters with in the past, but from his point of view, didn't consider him very friendly. And the bear was older, as I said. After they killed it, it seemed that the teeth were worn down a little bit. And since it looked not emaciated, but underfed compared to the bears that had already left the area, that Timothy would have encountered would have had more encounters with throughout all the summers, that would have, I guess, been more used to him. It was a bad situation. I know a lot of people say he's an idiot and all that, and you might be a little bit right with there. Other people say that he might have not been right in the head, and one person they even interviewed for the documentary states that. And that's from his point of view. He thinks that maybe that's why the bears didn't touch him, because they could kind of sense something was wrong with him. So they're like, nah, we're not touching that. And you can also say that's a little right. I would also go in that angle that the bears probably also didn't touch him because, one, he wasn't competing for the same resources, so no reason to see him as a rival. And two, he was obviously not a threat to them. So either way, they're not going to go after him. And the bears that he encountered each year that recognize him go, it's that guy again. It must be that time of year. So basically got used to seeing him maybe. Not the same way that, like a domestic animal will get used to seeing you, but they got used to him, and the one that killed him didn't see him that often. That's just a guess on my part, but it would make sense. I mean, look at the bears that live in areas that humans do go into more often, such as Yellowstone National Park. Now, they're still wild animals, but they're more used to humans. That's where you get those whole things, please do not feed the bears. Now, the bears would be indifferent to him up there, and they're not as used to humans, so a bear attack would be more likely up there. Now, as I said just a moment ago, the bears that he was well around more would notice him, but, like I said, I think that there's a reason that they did not attack him. At least, like, in a mauling fashion. But there's still that little bit of indifference. I mean, if you look closely in a lot of the videos, you notice it, especially the one that Herzog even points out near the end, that you only see indifference in their eyes. It just would take the right amount of circumstance for something to happen, and something did happen. Him and his girlfriend Amy both lost their lives. And the film basically talks a little bit about what we know for a fact happened, interviewing the guy that found their bodies, essentially. And I hadn't heard him talk about it yet because I'd seen other parts of the film randomly before I watched it as a whole today. But watching his for the first time, and I already knew the story too, but hearing it from the person who actually was there and actually saw the bear, and got back in his plane and circled and saw some of the remains, it's a little eerie. And then him talking more about it, and even seeing some of the actual remains of the bear that was left at the site. I know there's one thing that I know about the case they didn't cover, and that was that 2 bears were killed. The other one was a juvenile, and that they didn't do a necropsy on that one. The one that they know that killed Timothy and dragged him away, they did a necropsy on, and that's how they figured out that one is the one that ate him. But the other one, it's hard to tell if it ate him or if it was just doing a new territorial thing when it was killed. Then, of course, you also get an interview with the coroner. You got an interview with Timothy's ex-girlfriend, who is the one who's in possession of the infamous tape connected with this case, and that is the tape that recorded the beginning of the bear attack. It was a camcorder, like I'm recording this on. But when the attack went on, the lens cap was on, so it was all just like this. Testing. Basically like that. Now, Werner does not play the audio itself in the documentary, which there's going to be pros and cons of that. There's going to be people saying, well, why aren't they playing it? And there's other ones that go, thank God they didn't play it, because it's one of those things that you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Werner said that the reason he didn't play it was he wanted to create a documentary. He didn't want this to go into the reign of snuff film, territory of snuff film. Now, I can respect him for that, but the closest we get is there's a scene where he's actually listening to the tape, and he comments a little bit on it, and then at the end he turns it off, and he tells Timothy's ex that she should never listen to the tape, and that he suggests that she destroy it, because if she doesn't, it's just going to end up being an elephant in the room. Now, that's the last that they comment about it in the documentary, and from my research, I've heard of mixed things. I've heard some people say she destroyed it, but other ones, and this is the one that I see is a little bit more likely, that she put it in a safety deposit box and is not going to touch it again. And if that's the case, when she finally does pass away, her estate will probably figure out what to do with it if she hasn't destroyed it by then. And if they decide to leak it, that's on them then. Now, there is audio going around on the internet claiming to be the actual tape audio, or at least a section of it, and I have listened to it. Now, combined with what they mentioned in the documentary and a transcript of someone who actually did get the chance to listen to the tape, some aspects of it are correct, such as the first thing that Timothy yells on the tape, I'm being killed out here, and it's something to do with a frying pan, but other aspects are off. Plus the fact that if you listen to it closely, like the first time I listened to it, I was kind of caught off by all the thing, but then listening to part of it again, I'm like, you know what? The acoustics on this do not sound right. And some of it does sound fake. You'd have to listen to it to understand that, so I'm not going to put it in the video, but if you want to actually listen to the audio itself, you can Google it on YouTube. Just type in Grizzly Man Death Audio or something of that nature, and you should be able to find it easily. It just sounded fake when you listen to it closely. Now, there's a story I've heard connecting to this that could possibly explain that, and if this is the case, someone's ass should get fired for this, and that is that apparently, according to this rumor, that defends this being the actual audio, a police officer connected with the case recorded the first couple minutes of the tape onto his cell phone and leaked it somehow. Now, that might explain some of the subpar qualities of the audio. Like making, the acoustics and all that, you're recording one thing into a mic. But, as I said, if that was the case, someone's ass should have gotten fired. They probably should have been able to figure out who did it. Well, at least I hope they would. If not, then whoever did it got away with it. But there's just other qualities about it that come off as fake. And some of it just doesn't jive. Like, the person in the audio who's supposed to be Timothy. First scream at the beginning, okay, that makes sense, being attacked by the bear. But through the rest of it, he's screaming horribly. Whereas according to the documentary, he's moaning. Now, the coroner could be moaning and he actually means like a loud moan that's almost like a scream. But then some of the other stuff he's saying doesn't jive. Like in the audio, he's telling her to get the frying pan. Whereas, according to the documentary, he tells her to run away. Because he figures, okay, I'm going to get killed. I'm at least going to save my girlfriend and tell her to get out of here. While the bear's busy with me, you can escape. And apparently it's her decision to stay and hit the bear with the frying pan. And then it continues off with the bear dragging him away. And then the audio ending after 6 minutes. Which leads into some speculation points where what led up to the attack and what led up to Amy getting killed. There's some speculation there. Like an article I found that actually has apparently the actual audio, not fully transcribed, but like describes it. his speculation I happen to agree with, and that is that the bear attack was just a random thing. Timothy going outside to try to scare the bear off like he'd done 1,000 times, and him having to yell something to Amy at the wrong moment, causing the bear to charge. Right when she's starting the tape and going, "Is it still out there?" Which leads into the beginning of the tape. And then, of course, once he's gotten dragged off, her screaming at the wrong moment, causing the bear probably come back, kill her quickly, and then go back. It's one of those things that probably a good idea the tape ran out, but it also leads to the whole thing of we'll never know for certain some aspects of it. Or, the bear could have just came out and attacked him quickly on that night, wanting an easy meal, and then figuring, not a danger, but he could be an easy meal, but, it's one of those speculation things. If he had actually been recording something like I'm doing right now when the bear attacked, we know for certain, but then that would definitely be a snuff film thing if they decided to show it. Now, hearing everyone's opinion on Timothy throughout the film, we see his parents talk about him, we see the coroner talk about him, his ex talk about him, the guy that found him talk about him, and another guy connected with that talk about him. They all give different descriptions of him, saying that he was very enthusiastic with his work, commenting a little bit on his mental state, his over-enthusiasm, and he even got one part where this guy's reading some hate mail he's gotten about Timothy, which reading that I'm like, really? It's kind of the stuff that's, I don't like to use terms like this, but it's definitely seems like it's these two pieces that they read were written by conservatives based on the language. That's all I'm going to say about it. If you've watched the film, you know which letters I'm talking about. If not, when you do watch it, you know what I'm talking about. Because they do use like the tree hugger lingo in a derogatory fashion. And my opinion of Timothy is that he was a very enthusiastic individual. He loved nature. Was a little bit delusional though, because he thought the bears were his friends. I mean, these are not like tame bears. I mean, it's one thing if you're like this with, let's say, Brutus the bear, who was raised by a human. If you're best friends with that bear, that's one thing, because that was a bear that was raised in captivity. He's going to see humans as his extended family. But thinking that a wild bear can be your friend, no go. There's certain species of wild animals that could potentially be your buddy, like certain species of apes, like chimps and gorillas, maybe bonobos. Maybe an elephant, some of the higher intelligent ones. A grizzly bear being a predator, most likely not. Especially up in Alaska. Yellowstone Park, more likely, but up, more likely, well, by that I mean more likely, the chances are more likely in your favor, but up in Alaska, no. Like I mentioned earlier, indifference and his slight delusions, but he was enthusiastic, and in the end, it kind of cost him his life. But as they mentioned throughout the documentary, he would consider it an honor. Now, some people would question that viewpoint as, like, beforehand, before anything happens, you say it'd be an honor, but then in the middle of the action, you don't think so. But you never know. Maybe he figured, I live like this is I'm going to go out. Going out is a part of the food chain. It's one of those things we'll never know because, we can't read his mind. And in the end, his ashes were scattered up in that national park, so he's not part of that forever. Like I said, overall, it's a good documentary. Werner Herzog's direction is great. His narration's great. Like I said, he gives his opinion, but without being overly preachy. The few times we see him on screen talking with people face to face, like the scene with the tape, he comes across pretty well. And his descriptions of Timothy, even though when he questions and gives his opinion on the man, you could tell he's saying that the man was very enthusiastic, if not a little deluded, and a little not in the right frame of mind, to put it nicely. But that the footage he shot, and hopefully the lesson that he could teach all of us about nature, is his legacy, and that it helps wildlife in the future. And nothing really much else to say. This documentary definitely comes with my recommendation if you're a fan of documentary as a genre, if you're a fan of filmmaking, if you're a fan of nature, and if you've heard of this case and just wanted to see a little bit more about it, definitely comes with my recommendation.